So, we're now on widescreen. Hey guys, so it turns out I'm an absolute idiot and forgot to set the aspect ratio to 16:9 when I made my first two videos. After hearing some critiques about my first video in this series, I will be changing the pace at which I cover the episodes in each video. At first, I wanted to cover 3 episodes of the radio drama at a time, but that would result in some pretty long videos to edit. So after the first episode, as well as this one, keep in mind I'm still going to be covering 3 episodes in this one, but after this I'll be going ahead and covering 2 episodes at a time instead from that point forward. Anyways, let's get back into it. This will be part 2 in my plot breakdown and episode review series on the GAIA GEAR radio drama. For those who haven't seen the first video in my dissection series, I'll have a link down in the description, as I will try to recap events briefly, but nonetheless will be going forward with the story. This whole video is spoilers, so if you haven't experienced GAIA GEAR, or haven't seen my first video in my series, go check that out. And for now, let's get back into it. So for a recap of my previous video, GAIA GEAR follows Afranche Char, a clone of the late Char Aznable, who's never been told he was a clone until now. He's being pursued by the Federation's Manhunter Agency and has inexplicably found himself under the protection and guidance of a space-led resistance movement known as Metatron. In this time period, technology has stagnated, and mobile suits have seemingly been phased out for a new generation of mobile weapons, the man-machines. The man-machines are advanced for their time, but as we'll see later, are no more deadly than their previous counterparts. Anyways, in the last 3 episodes, we saw Afranche meet the forces of Metatron, after he and his fiancée Everly are chased by the Manhunters off their peaceful, secluded island. Afranche learns he's a clone, and eventually he comes to pilot the Metatron's latest model, the GAIA GEAR Alpha, with him destroying his first enemy man-machine and left to ponder his place in the world, and what exactly his mysterious new destiny is leading him towards. Anyways, now that that's done with, let's get into episode 4. Where we last left off with episode 3, things ended pretty explosively to say the least. Afranche jumped into the GAIA GEAR for the first time, and managed to take out his first man-machine. Our heroes managed to escape the Manhunters while leaving the Manhunter agent, Ensign Urian, to float out at sea with his fellow comrades. The ship heads towards Hong Kong, and Afranche is left to figure out the meaning behind his strange hallucinations, as well as their mysterious meaning. Episode 4 kicks off with the ship arriving at the docks at Hong Kong. Afranche and Everly are together on one of the abandoned warehouse roofs and are watching the space shuttles take off in the distance. Everly herself has never seen a space shuttle launch before, and finds it scary that people have to use such dangerous vehicles to make it into orbit. Perhaps she has a fear of heights. Afranche, though, isn't fazed by this, but he does agree with her, saying it's no small feat to make it into orbit. When Everly questions how Afranche knows of all of this, Afranche's taken aback and finds it odd as well. She complains he suddenly knows of things he's not versed in, and Afranche agrees, but in his head remembers Urian's words from the other night, and he worries that he might be right about him, that he might just be nothing more than a vessel for Char's memories. His fears growing as his mind subconsciously has started to become more aware of these changes, that he might indeed just be a puppet. Before he can scratch at this anymore, he hears Everly's voice calling to him, asking how exactly he was able to pilot the GAIA GEAR on his own. Afranche says he's not sure and that whatever happened was probably just out of desperation. Everly, however, doesn't fully buy this, and asks Afranche to promise her not to pilot a man-machine again, fearing for his safety. Afranche, with no other choice, agrees, and the two continue to walk along the roof, still watching the shuttles depart. Back inside the cargo ship, Michael and the others go over the GAIA gear and its equipment, covering the entire suit in sheets as to hide it from any onlookers. They know that it's not enough, though, and someone's going to stumble across this man-machine sooner or later. As they all notice the passing shuttles, one of them takes note of the fact fewer and fewer of them are launching throughout the day. It seems the Manhunters have been preventing people from leaving, and it strikes them as an odd thing for the Federation to let them do. The topic is dropped, however, as the trio begin to bicker with each other about who's in charge of finishing the cleanup. As the bickering dies down, the question is brought up about what exactly happened last night with the GAIA gear, the three all wondering how exactly Afranche was able to pilot the machine when clearly they all knew he'd never seen one before. One of them chuckles and finds himself relieved as they seem to have determined for themselves that he must have probably have had some training while living in secret. This, of course, at least for us the listener, is not the case. Shortly after, though, Michael refutes this and tells them that that's wrong and that Afranche is in reality what those in space call a new type, that because of his powers, he was easily able to operate the machine without the need for training. Once again, this is wrong. Yes, he's a new type, at least later Afranche's powers become more prominent, but in this instance, it was his own cloned body acting on his behalf. Kellen mocks this and says that those powers must be pretty convenient for a new type. Joe, all the while, is pondering this and wonders if the rumors are really true and that, quote-unquote, Char Aznable has truly returned again. Kellen tells him to shut up and get back to work, as he wants to get this done early so that they can go and explore the city while they have the extra time. After all, they are in Hong Kong, and the food is calling their names. Before they can leave, however, the captain stops them and tells them that they can't leave just yet, as he has something else he needs for them to do. It's here that Krishna makes her presence known, and the captain shows them one of the warehouses he's managed to procure from one of their contacts. That after all that work, he wants them to move the GAIA gear into a shed. The captain asks where Afranche is, and Krishna tells him he's with Everly, and ever since the other night with the GAIA gear, he hasn't been acting normal. The captain thinks he'll be fine, and that he's just been through a lot lately, and after all, someday he'll be Metatron's leader after this. Krishna agrees, and he asks her to go get the other two over to the car so that they can go into town. In the city, Everly and Afranche are very overwhelmed by the chaos of it. It's very busy, the streets are packed with people, and the lights and sounds of the city are not sitting well with them. When Afranche asks where they're going, the captain tells them that they're taking them to one of their contacts, the head of the Char Continuation Project. Afranche is fearful of all this. He has many questions to ask, but the captain says that he shouldn't be afraid and that these are truths he has to learn regardless of how he feels. Suddenly, their car is spontaneously attacked. It seems a group of street kids are throwing trash at the passing cars, and this makes the couple freak out. When Afranche asks if this is normal, the captain tells them yes, and that this is the result of the Manhunters' new behavior, that throughout the last few years, they've been systematically preventing people from leaving the planet, and the cities have become overpopulated because of it. The city they're in at the moment was never intended to house 50 million people, and that whatever the Manhunters are doing won't be able to persist for long, as civil unrest continues throughout the world. Everly then begins to feel slightly carsick as Afranche comes to the realization that this is one of the truths about the planet he's been living on this whole time. The scene ends with him realizing that his little island home was indeed a far cry from the rest of the world that's been outside of it. We are then brought to an old run-down building. The captain tells them to watch their step, since this Metatron hideout hasn't been in the best shape for a while, with broken glass crunching at their feet as they enter the abandoned structure. The captain rings the buzzer, and a woman's voice lets the group inside. Madra asks for her forgiveness as they got caught up in the city traffic and missed their rendezvous time. The woman welcomes them in and asks that they all take a seat. She closes the door and the captain finally introduces her to the couple. This is Miranda Howe, and she is the director of the Char Continuation Project. The captain introduces her to Afranche, and the woman says she already knows who he is, and that she could already tell who he was from his face alone. She welcomes him to the city and formally introduces herself to him. Afranche, on the other hand, is weirded out by their handshake. He gets a weird nostalgic feeling when he meets her, almost as if he's already met her before. Everly pulls him back to reality, though, as it seems he's been standing there frozen for a bit too long. Miranda then asks the captain and Everly to leave, as she would like to have a word with Afranche alone for a moment. When Everly objects to this, Afranche says it'll be okay, and that he'll be fine, and that she should go wait outside for now. Krishna then offers to take Everly into the city and get some fresh air for her. The captain suggesting that they go out and pick some new clothes for Afranche and Everly while they're out, seeing as they've both been stuck wearing the same pair of clothes since they left the island. Before Everly can say anything more, though, Krishna has already taken Everly by the arm, and the two head out. This is where Afranche gets to have a moment with Miranda. Strangely, she points out that Everly is as charming as she heard she was. This throws Afranche for a loop, though, as it worries him that the woman knows about Everly already. Miranda, in turn, tells him that Everly is just one of the many things she knows of when it comes to Afranche, that she's known all about him and his life all this time. When Afranche is shaken by this, Miranda asks him to sit down, as the two have a lot to talk about. As she tries to offer him a drink, however, Afranche frantically asks her the question that's been aching him since the other night. Is he human? The woman smirks and says the captain told her about what happened with that Centurion, and that the man must have really put some bad ideas inside of Afranche's head. That from everything Afranche's been told about people, that there really shouldn't be a difference between a person born of natural means or one born artificially. Afranche doesn't believe this, though, and thinks that the idea of an organism born from artificial means is a true desecration of life itself. But Miranda sighs at this notion, thinking that Afranche is sadly caught in the ideas of the old-fashioned, and that what he's saying are just the opinions of those who were born from a time and in a place where the technology didn't exist. Whether love is involved in the creation of life is irrelevant, and that regardless of the feelings behind it, Afranche's existence is an absolute. When Afranche denies this, and says all they want is a copy of Char Aznable to lead them, Miranda strongly says no, and that's not the case. That in reality, what they need right now is not Char Aznable, but in reality, someone who possesses his memories instead. That what they really need is Afranche, not Char. Afranche then demands to know why on earth he was left to live on that island then. If they wanted him to be their leader, why did they put him there? Miranda responds with something that catches Afranche quite off guard. That what she wanted for him was a normal life and a normal childhood, free from those burdens and one where he was actually happy. That what Char Aznable was in comparison was a man who lived and died fighting in space, and that he never learned to appreciate the very humanity he was trying to save. That by giving Afranche the life that Char was denied, one where he would live happily down on Earth, Afranche would grow up to become a man who could correct the mistakes of his predecessor and lead the independence movement from the perspective of a man who still values humanity and deeply cares for the planet that created all of them. Afranche will be the Char Aznable the world deserves, rather than the one it's had. Okay, pause. I gotta geek out. This moment, oh my god, that is beautiful. Oh my god, it's so good. Just That speech, the speech in the actual audio drama, really hits me with the feels. This is the moment where we learn just how different Afranche is compared to Char, and it's such a good moment. For the longest time, Gundam fans are shown characters who mirror that of Char, but with GAIA Gear, it's the one great exception, giving us a literal Char clone, but one who's the exact polar opposite of the man before him. The guy is shaping up to be a true hero, and I love this story for it. Now, dialing things back and taking the plot away from Afranche and our heroes, we cut back all the way to space, and we are greeted again by Bijan Dargle, where he and Lieutenant Marissa are being served dinner at a fancy restaurant. Marissa even taking note that the restaurant's music automatically changed when Dargle entered the room. The captain takes note of the song change and comments that it seems that with his arrival, the restaurant manager knows to remember his place. As the moment Dargle came in, the manager remembered to change the music to Dargle's favorite composer. Side note, it's hilarious. His favorite composer is Wagner. It makes me laugh. Marissa, on the other hand, sees it as the perfect example of the Maha's authority over Hellas taking its roots. Dargle agrees, and that with the former Metatron facility they managed to capture, now becoming their new headquarters, Dargle finds the colony's atmosphere to be very ironic in this situation. People are starting to appeal to them as to not get kicked out of the colony, that this same colony was not too long ago trying to make weapons to fight against them. As the conversation shifts, Marissa then brings up the topic of Urien again, that his lifeboat was recovered by their Hong Kong forces and that he failed in his mission to capture the mysterious Char clone. She then finds it amazing that the Metatron forces were able to secure him with someone as skilled as Urien pursuing them. Dargle concurs and says that this undoubtedly confirms the value of Char's clone to the Metatron cause. Marissa then asks Dargle what exactly his plan going forward is. Dargle says he's still leaving Urien in charge, letting him get a second chance at redemption, and now that Metatron has made it to Hong Kong, their only way out of the city and into space is through the use of a public shuttle, and that as long as they ground the ones at the spaceport, they should be able to corner them before Afranche and the others can escape. Marissa, on the other hand, then asks why Dargle is placing so much faith in Urien. That yes, she knows Dargle enlisted him, but doesn't seem to understand what the captain sees in him. Dargle's answer is pretty straightforward, that the man seems to have the right kind of attitude about himself, and that he gives a sense that he and the captain share a common sense of ambition, one that Dargle intends to use to his advantage. The man needs people like Urien to do what needs to be done. Marissa worries about this notion and warns the captain to be careful with that line of thinking, worrying that someday he might be betrayed in the end. Dargle agrees, but that day isn't going to happen anytime soon, not while he still has the strength to act. Marissa agrees with the captain, and the two conclude with a toast, that now that the preparations have been finalized, the Earth Reverse immigration plan can be set into motion. Back down on Earth, we're taken to the headquarters of the Hong Kong Manhunter Division. Urien has been brought ashore, and the man who managed to fish him out introduces himself to Urien. The man's name is Zhang Wenfu, and the man is one of the commanding officers in charge of the Maha forces here. He also apologizes to Urien, telling him he's sorry that he had to undergo such an ordeal by himself. The man then states he's nonetheless impressed that one of their high-end man machines was able to be taken down so easily by Afranche and the GAIA Gear, confirming their suspicions that Afranche might indeed be a new type. Urien, on the other hand, isn't bothered by this, and says that regardless, the clone of Char will be no match for the legendary ace man-machine pilot that is Zhang Wenfu. Zhang smiles at the compliment and asks Urien what he thinks Afranche's next move is, the two concluding the young man is no doubt going to try to make a break for it into space now that he's met up with his Metatron allies here in the city. with Zhang stating that not even Metatron will be able to escape the gravity of Earth, that humanity has lived for 200 years in space now, and ever since they left, humanity hasn't exactly evolved or changed since then, that things like new types are nothing more than a fantasy dreamt up by radicals who tried to justify their actions for the sake of their own sovereignty. It is here that we learn something interesting, and hints at a cultural shift that's managed to slowly hit the Earth sphere over the course of 100 years. Zhang mentions that the people in space have managed to prosper in recent decades, in many ways surpassing the elite of Earth, and since then have become arrogant and have recklessly been defying the government that controls them. When Urien states that he himself is a colonist, the Major asks if he truly believes if new types are real. Urien doesn't comment on this and simply states that regardless of where people are born, no one is truly above the other, that someone who is truly elite should be a person with the ambition to achieve the status. The Major, in return, somewhat agrees with this sentiment, and the two stop their cab ride to go for a walk instead. Zhang seeming to have taken a liking to Urien and decides to show him around the city as a friendly gesture. As the two of them walk along the crusty pavement, Zhang asks Urien how he's finding the city so far, that Zhang himself occasionally likes to do casual flyovers over the city in his man-machine, noting that with his rank amongst the Manhunters, no one seems to care when he goes on patrol in the city by himself, even when it goes against the proper protocols. The man even stating that he likes to weave his man-machine through the city and all of its tall buildings and enjoys the scenery, but, in the end, rather dreams of one day being able to burn the ugly things down someday, cleansing the city and being able to enjoy the view and scenery without the clutter of buildings to block out the sun, and listening to the annoying sound of this city and its shifty inhabitants. Urien, go figure, says he's okay with all of this, and he can tell from this place that not everyone is super happy with the two of them being here, that since they started walking, the people passing them by have been giving them some shady glances. Zhang tells Urien that they're just pissed off, and that since the beginning of the space immigration period, that this city has been the target of some serious deportation crackdowns, and that they don't exactly have the most respect for those who bear the Manhunter's insignia. The two then continue their stroll, and the scene comes to a close. Wow, guys! The Manhunters really have the best kinds of people working for them! We've got an evil bigwig with a diabolical as hell plan that could destroy the planet, as well as a pretty temptress with absolute devotion to her master, a cold as ice subordinate who's now a pervert, and now a famous man-machine pilot who just so happens to have dreams of committing genocide. Great job, guys! You really got us rooting for you. Back on the beach, Afranche and Miranda discuss the coming rain, that even though it always comes to blanket the city, the pollution in the air does nothing to wash away the filth that remains on the ground. Afranche then mentions how the captain once mentioned that if the colonies hadn't been built, human beings would have covered the entire planet in such filth. Miranda sees that this is one of the things that Afranche is beginning to understand when it comes to the importance of leaving his island home. Afranche agrees that seeing the world as it truly is, he thinks he's beginning to come to a new understanding of why his island home was so special. Miranda concludes that this is why they built the colonies, and that if humanity wants a paradise like his island, they'd have to leave Earth behind so that other forms of life that exist on it could prosper, that it's the least humanity could do for Earth for all the centuries of torment they put through the planet. Yet, at the moment, mankind thinks itself to be the master of its own universe, and as a result has defiled Earth and its beauty as a result. The time has come for humanity to open its eyes and see the truth of its own actions. Miranda then brings up something else about Afranche that he hasn't realized yet, that his memories of Char had begun to awaken the moment Metatron began its conflict with the Manhunters, that what's been happening has not been any kind of coincidence, and that this is his destiny guiding him forward. Afranche then asks her what will happen when he reaches space if he does, that will he somehow turn into Char Aznable himself as a result of going? Miranda, however, eases his rising fears that in reality, Char's memories and Afranche's identity are two separate things, her words actually sparking another tick inside Afranche's head with those words. Afranche hears more words of the speech he'd heard before, and exclaims that Char's memories are trying to take him over. With her hand on his shoulder, Miranda reassures him that what's happening to him is only to make him stronger in the end, that he must go to space so that the pain will stop, and that also when he finally goes, he will finally be at one with himself. Pause, little break. If you're like me and you watched Gundam Unicorn before listening to GAIA GEAR, that story actually does a good job of making you feel for Afranche in this moment, cause we the audience know that something similar to Afranche was attempted in the past with Full Frontal, but later on, you'll grow to really understand what Lady Miranda was really talking about. Afranche does not go in that dark direction, and I'm glad this story doesn't do that with him. We've already seen what an evil Char clone is like. Let's let Afranche be the good one, alright? Anyways, that's my little tangent. Let's get back into it. We then cut to Krishna and Everly. The two are out in the busy shopping district, and the two find all of this exploring to be tiring, so the two of them take a rest. When Krishna and Everly go to get something to drink, Everly can't help but be disgusted by the taste. The city's drinks taste like cough syrup to her, and that she rather prefers the drinks from her home rather than the ones here in the city that have been processed. When Krishna says that she herself would like the idea of living on a beautiful island like hers, Everly can't help but ask if taking Afranche out into space will be a good idea, and that she wonders if Afranche will actually be happy if he goes. Her head is still stuck on the incident from the other night, with Afranche sitting alone on the deck. When Krishna hesitates, Everly demands answers, with Krishna saying that she doesn't know, but that the true fact is that they need his help most of all. Everly, on the other hand, hates this, as she feels she is the only one in the group that's truly looking out for him, and that the others are only thinking about what they want from him instead. The two remain silent for a brief moment, with Everly apologizing as she does admit that Krishna and the others have been very kind to the two of them, and that they would have probably died if it wasn't for their help. Krishna says it's okay, and that she's sorry that she can't offer anything more. She then offers that Everly go with them into space, but the girl is very hesitant. Krishna then admits that Afranche will no doubt need her company, as going alone would rather be very difficult for him. This is when Everly agrees, and the two decide to head back to the others. The rain has stopped, and Afranche will no doubt like to see the things she picked out for each of them. But before they can make their way back over, a car slams its brakes behind them, with Urian stepping out of the vehicle. It seems the man stopped them as he was heading back to the base with Zhang, marking the end of Episode 4. Now, this episode has no action in it, but nonetheless is filled with important story details and answers to very important questions that we the listeners have had. One of them being that who exactly created Afranche? Now, later on in the story, we'll get more info on his proper origins, but for now, it's a good thing to note that Miranda is no doubt the person who is personally responsible for Afranche's creation. The woman is pretty mysterious at first, but nonetheless truly cares for him. Dare I say, throughout GAIA GEAR, Lady Miranda is the closest thing Afranche will ever have to having a true mother, and unlike Char before, who in comparison to Australia, who we learn is kind of a neglectful person towards her son, is a great contrast in comparison to the original, being rather compassionate and understanding for Afranche and his fears, knowing he's been through a lot and is fully aware that he knows nothing at all and tries to guide him the best she can so that he won't end up becoming the monster he fears will come to possess him. Once again, I have to state this, the guy is not like Full Frontal. He only has Char's memories, not his consciousness. As for the introduction to Zhang, it is a very striking one. He isn't around very long in the story, but he definitely fits the bill for being one of the Maha's big henchman characters, showing us just how dark and dangerous the Federation's soldiery have truly devolved into since their heyday. Lastly, if you haven't watched my very first video on GAIA GEAR, not the first breakdown of the story, but rather my essay video, you can definitely see the indirect connection that this story makes to the idea of being set in the aftermath of the Warring Space States period. Earth is in decay, and as a result, the Earthnoids blame the colonies since they've managed to band together and form little economic partnerships without them. It's almost like we've heard that idea proposed by someone else before. Anyways, on to the next episode. The story picks up immediately after where we left off. It seems Krishna and Everly managed to escape Urian via a car, and the two are being pursued. They manage to radio Madra that they're in danger, and the others try to come up with a plan to rescue them. When Afranche is told that the one pursuing them is Urian, he immediately rushes into action. On the highway, Krishna and Everly are bolting it across the open road, and that Krishna tells Everly to hang on, as she hopes to lose them in the passing traffic. As the two make it through a tunnel, we cut to Zhang and Urian, who are still hot on their tail. It seems they got picked up and are now chasing them in one of the Manhunter's armored cars. Zhang points out it's their lucky day, and Urian agrees, as it seems they showed up at the right place at the right time. As the two chase them, Zhang takes note of Krishna, and it seems there's more to her. She seems to be an excellent driver, and they're having difficulty keeping pace with them. Urian interjects and admits that Krishna is hard to catch for Zhang, just as she's been as hard for him. He then says he seems to be liking Krishna more and more with this. Seriously, dude? Anyways, back to the others at Miranda's hideout, the captain lets Afranche know that Michael and the other boys are on the way, and that if they need to, they'll send out the GAIA GEAR to rescue them if all else fails. Miranda objects to this and exclaims that if they do that, the Manhunters will immediately be alerted to their location, and they'll be sending man-machines no doubt in response. This in turn would hamper their means of escaping to space. Miranda then pulls a ticket to one of the shuttles that's launching soon. This ticket is the only one she has, and she hands it to Afranche, asking him to get out of here while he still has the chance. She then turns to the captain and asks him to make sure that if he does plan on launching the GAIA GEAR, that he makes sure he do it after the shuttle leaves. Afranche, though, doesn't want to do this, as he hasn't even fully decided if he wants to go, and rather demands that instead he go and rescue Everly instead. When the captain insists that he listen to Miranda, Afranche refuses and admits that maybe it was a mistake that letting Urian live was what led them to all of this. When the captain hears this, he immediately refuses, saying that it was only a matter of time before they were found, and that in the end, they all let their guard down in the end. Back on the road, Zhang and Urian are still pursuing the two girls. Zhang asks if he still thinks they'll be able to escape. Urian shrugs him off and asks what he thinks. Zhang says that this town is rather small in reality, and they won't be able to lose sight of them, mockingly saying that this chase is getting rather tiresome. When Urian asks if they should get the police involved, Zhang replies saying that they can't rely on their assistance, that the Manhunters need to rely on each other rather than anyone else on the outside. Soon after, Zhang receives a call on his car's phone, and one of Zhang's subordinates informs him that they'll be launching in their Gussas soon, and that they'll be on their way shortly. When Urian asks why on earth they would use man-machines in such a crowded city, Zhang replies that this will be the fastest way to catch them, and orders his men to try to disable their vehicle and avoid harming them. Meanwhile, the girls are still struggling with shaking off their pursuers, hoping that the others will soon come to save them. But as the two make it under the overpass, they hear a familiar whizzing sound coming from the sky above. As Krishna sees the Gussa land on the freeway ahead of them, she slams the brakes and tries to steer the car away from him, but the turn comes too late, and the vehicle slams and crashes into the man-machine's ankle, causing it to smash against the side of the highway's concrete dividers. As Krishna unbuckles and tells Everly to run, she looks over and it seems that Everly can't get out of her side. But as the two struggle, the chase seems to be over. The man-machines now standing above them, and Urien and Zhang's vehicle have now encircled them. Meanwhile, at the armored car, Urien asks that Zhang leave the rest to him, and Zhang agrees, wishing him luck on dealing with them. As Urien exits the vehicle, Zhang orders his men to stand down, seeing as the situation has now been dealt with. Urien then approaches the girl's vehicle and orders them to come out. Krishna hisses the man's name as she rolls down the window, with Urien flirtatiously telling her that they really shouldn't be meeting like this, and then asking her if she's hurt or not. Ugh. Come on, man, you're so freaking gross. Anyways, we then cut to Madra, who's lost Krishna's signal. When Afranche asks about it, Madra answers that they might still be on the run, and they might have been forced to leave the vehicle behind. But before they can try again, the radio cuts in, and they both hear the voice of Ensign Urien on the other end, mockingly asking if the captain already forgot the sound of his voice, leaving the two of them speechless. The ensign then laughs and says that he's now captured the girls, and if they want them back, they're going to have to come to the Maha's HQ and surrender to them. When Afranche demands to know if they're safe, the man laments that they're fine, for the moment that is. And before Afranche can say any more, Urien cuts the radio off, leaving the two to wonder what exactly they should do now that the girls have been captured. When Afranche asks what they're going to do, the captain reassures him that they're going to get them back, and that they need to go with Miranda so that they can rally the others back at the docks. They travel to the parking lot together, but before they can make it to their vehicle, we hear one of Miranda's men call out to her before getting shot dead on the pavement. It seems the Manhunters have been aware of their location from the get-go, and they're now planning on wiping them out here and now. Luckily, the two see a transit bus nearby, and the three decide to hop on before the Manhunters can have a chance of catching them. On the bus, Afranche is terrified. He can't leave for space now that Everly is in danger. When Miranda hears this, she says that he can't, and that if he decides to stay here and save them, Everly and Krishna will absolutely be killed if he tries. Afranche says he'll give himself up to the Manhunters on the condition that they release them, but Miranda has to stop him. She tells Afranche that the Manhunters won't be so generous, and that they'll, in all likelihood, they won't let any of them go, even if he tried bargaining with them. Afranche then asks her what else he can do, and Miranda laments that the only thing he should be focusing on right now is getting into space and nothing else. Afranche then says if he can't save them now, then what use would he be if he decided to go up into space? Miranda tells him that his personal feelings should be put aside if he eventually becomes the new leader of Metatron. With Afranche left to stir in his thoughts, the scene ends. Jesus, people, can somebody please give this guy a break for 1 second? Please? He wants to help her. Please, just let him go help her. Anyways, soon after, Michael and the other mechanics are still at the dock, and the three are pulling off the tarps on the GAIA gear. Together, they argue which one of them will go ahead and pilot the suit, each of them worrying that the moment they start it up, every man-machine in the city will no doubt come running and blast the GAIA gear out of the sky on sight. Soon after, the captain and the others arrive at the warehouse. The three confirm with him that the girls were captured and agree not to send out the GAIA gear, as that would no doubt hamper their exit plan for Afranche. That they will rescue them, but they can't jeopardize their chance of getting Afranche up to Metatron. Afranche says he can't do it. Miranda turns to him and hands him a fake passport, telling him he'll need this when he goes to the spaceport. But as he holds it in his hands, he exclaims to the captain that this isn't right, that he can't go into space alone. When Miranda tells him it's too late, Afranche says he can't go, that he has to save Everly, the two of them being friends for life, and that he can't abandon her now. We're then shown a brief flashback to the two of them, the events that led up to the two of them deciding to get married when they become adults, and that they promise to stay together forever. Afranche admits he cannot leave her, and then begins to take actions into his own hands. Heedless of their protests, Afranche runs to the hangar and gets into the GAIA gear, apologizing to Everly that he's going to have to break his recent promise to her, but that in all honesty, this is done in order to save her life. As he looks down at his hands as they grip the machine's controls, he realizes that he is in fact truly capable of controlling this massive machine. This thought sends another tick through his mind. As the ringing persists, he asks out to the void of his own mind if Char Aznable is really there, and that if he'll lend him his strength to him. The GAIA gear in return stands tall, and Afranche demands the others to open the hangar doors. Miranda tries to stop him, but the captain holds her back, telling her that this is Afranche's orders and that they should be obeying him. He then tells Joe to get the door, and as the GAIA gear marches out of the hangar, Miranda asks what exactly Afranche plans to do, and the young man's response is simple: he's going to get them back. The GAIA gear then blasts off into the air, leaving Miranda to ask why the captain let him go. The captain simply says the man is going to save the woman that he loves. When Miranda berates him for it, the man states that this is the kind of leader he wants to follow, not a clone of Char Aznable, but rather Afranche Char the way he is now. Back at Maha HQ, Urian interrogates Krishna and Everly once again, and demands to know the location of her allies and the GAIA gear. When she says she doesn't know, Urian looks over her shoulder and threatens her if she doesn't do what he asks her, then he's going to get answers out of Everly instead. When Krishna tells him not to lay a hand on her, Urian creepily tells her that Everly seems very valuable to Afranche, and that he can't ignore her out of quote-unquote politeness. Krishna is nonetheless creeped out by his words, holding Everly behind her, and Urian decides to back off, shrugging off her criticisms and saying he, quote-unquote, is just being nice, and that Maha's interrogations can be quite cruel, that aside from Krishna herself, that Everly herself wouldn't be able to bear the torture. Before Krishna can reiterate that she doesn't know anything, Urian slams his fist on the table and yells at her, telling her not to test him. Krishna then states that his threats won't work on her. Urian then reiterates what Afranche was worrying about earlier, stating that he'd regret letting him live, and that this is the result of his mercy, that he's going to continue to make him regret it. Urian then states that Afranche's level of kindness isn't useful to his cause, and that he'll make him see that. Krishna then turns his own words on his head, stating that if it weren't for Afranche's mercy, he wouldn't be here because of it. But to Urian, he sees that as nothing but a humiliation, and that Krishna wouldn't understand how the man sees how his own honor has been betrayed, that as long as Afranche lives, he'd continue to be tormented by these thoughts, and he must kill him in the end so that he can justify his actions. Shortly after Urian's little monologue, Zhang enters the room and says that the GAIA gear has reappeared. This takes Urian aback for a second. He wasn't expecting them to send out their man-machine. When Zhang explains where it's heading from, Krishna's eyes light up with joy. It seems he's come with the others to rescue the pair, and it seems they intend to attack the Maha facility. When Zhang asks her if the pilot could be Afranche, Krishna says she isn't sure, and Everly believes this, as she remembers the promise she had to make to her about piloting the GAIA gear. When Zhang thinks that there might be other pilots, judging from the intel that they have, Zhang then tells Urian that he's going to go out with his men, and asks Urian if he could do him a favor, that to tell Dargle about all of this, that the Metatron forces have finally broken their silence, and now they're planning on marching on their base. When Urian asks if he's going to pilot a man-machine himself, Zhang tells him that he's going to let his troops handle it. Seems they need to have a little glory themselves for once. Now, side note, this next part is where we get into one of the big problems I have with Krishna as a character. When she senses that Afranche is on his way, she goes full fangirl mode and thinks, "Oh my gosh! He's coming to save me, my hero," but then immediately realizes, wait, no, he's coming to save Everly. Just keep that thought in your head as the story goes on, because this part of her character is actually going to get her into a lot of trouble later. Not with Afranche or Everly, but just with herself. Because, like I said in my last video, Krishna is a nice girl, but she doesn't exactly make the best decisions when it comes to her emotions. Luckily, she managed to restrain herself in this instance, but later, when Everly is temporarily out of the picture, this isn't gonna progress well for her. Anyways, she admits Afranche's plan is reckless, but admits he's got a kind heart, and he'll do his best to save them. Out in the air, Afranche can start to sense that Everly is nearby, and he starts to pilot the GAIA gear towards the base. On ground level, the others try to follow him, and that they themselves are having trouble keeping up with the GAIA gear, which is moving at super fast speeds. The guys all wonder where he's going, but the captain reassures him that he's doing what's right. But the group all worries as Afranche has never been in this place before, and that Afranche himself doesn't realize this place is not going to be a cakewalk. The base itself is heavily guarded, and it won't help that the entire base's man-machine force is readying to face them. But, judging from the captain, they can feel that Afranche isn't scared, and in all likelihood, the next actions he takes will no doubt determine if he is in fact a true new type. As the captain finishes speaking, they see that the Gussas have emerged, and they're in hot pursuit. They all worry if Afranche can take on 3 of them, but the captain tells them that Afranche will take care of them, and that they're going to focus on rescuing the girls themselves. Back in the GAIA gear's cockpit, Afranche has landed, noticing the warning flashes and sees that 3 Gussas are approaching from behind. As Afranche tries to pick out which weapon he wants to use, he begins to realize they're all flying a little too low to the ground, and if he engages the Gussas, he might end up incurring unnecessary casualties if he misses any of his shots. Over with the Gussas, the 3 man-machine pilots try to coordinate their plan of attack, hoping to draw the GAIA gear close to one of them and pin him down before he has a chance to strike. The leader himself, still intrigued about the GAIA gear, wonders if they're going to see its true potential when they fight it. As they land, surrounding him, the lead pilot marches forward. He wonders why the GAIA gear isn't moving, though. He nearly has the beam rifle shoved against its back, and he's clearly in range. With a scatter shot of beam energy, the GAIA gear dodges it in a blur of motion. The pilot is baffled. He wonders if Afranche was able to predict his moves. He fires another shot, and the GAIA gear dodges it again, leaving the Gussa pilot frustrated. As the GAIA gear plants its feet firmly on the ground, Afranche demands that he's going to get Everly back, and that they should stay out of his way. With an effortless motion, Afranche sidesteps, turns around, and drives his beam saber into the torso of the leader Gussa, killing the pilot and causing it to topple over. Luckily, this doesn't explode, though, and Afranche realizes if he lowers the power of his beam rifle, he might be able to destroy them without having their reactors overload. With a quick adjustment to the beam saber blade, he begins to face down the other 2 man-machines, cutting them to ribbons as he leaps towards them. We then cut back to Zhang, who's trying to get a sit-rep of the current battle and has found out that all 3 of the Gussas have been taken out, with the only surviving pilot left requesting backup now that all of their suits have been destroyed. Zhang is in shock, as all 3 pilots he sent out were all skilled veterans, and how it's absolutely impossible that he could have taken out all 3 of them. When Urian asks to use a man-machine so that he can face them, Zhang refuses, and tells him that he needs to deal with this himself. He then orders his men to ready his own Gussa, and he himself shall go face the GAIA gear alone. He then leaves Urian by himself, leaving him to stew in his own thoughts, the man hoping that Afranche doesn't get beaten too easily, as he himself still wants a crack at taking on Afranche himself. With that notion, the episode comes to an end. Now, this episode has a lot. My goodness. largely an action-packed episode, and I'm glad we're getting into more of the action-packed fights of this story, but unfortunately the artwork of these first few chapters doesn't have a lot on the man-machine side of things, like the fights and whatnot. So let me know if you like how I've got this sort of planned out with the maps and whatnot. Once we get into the later stuff, we'll get to see better depictions of the man-machines and what that kind of stuff is like. But for now, I'd like to know your guys' opinion on the way I've illustrated it with the images and whatnot. I do like that Afranche is gaining more confidence in himself, seeing that he's the only sane one in the group. It's a good thing to see, considering the fact that everyone around him is either caught up in the mission or the overarching plan, instead of just, hey, our friends are in danger, my girlfriend's in danger, I don't care what you guys want me to do, I'm doing what I should do. It's a great bit of progress for him, and I really like it. Anyways, that's all I really have to say about this episode. We'll jump right into the stuff, into the action and stuff, right into episode 6. So, let's get into that. We're brought back to the car with Miranda, Madra, and the guys. Miranda asks them to stop the vehicle. When the captain asks why, Miranda says that even if they go to the Mahat headquarters, there's no way they'd have a chance of rescuing the girls, that they're flying in blind, and that they should change gears and head for the shuttle launch site so that they can secure one of them for Afranche when he gets back. The captain turns to her, and he likes this plan more, and that Miranda seems to be extra confident right now. She says that they have no other options with the GAIA GEAR dealing with their forces and the shuttle site being unguarded at this moment. The group then decides that they need to work together if they're going to get Afranche into space, and that they can't ignore this opportunity. The captain is skeptical at first, but Michael says that they can do it, and if they even do it fast, they can get the GAIA GEAR up into space as well. Michael knows how to pilot one of the shuttles, and all they need to do is get it fueled and loaded with the man-machine so that they can pull off a quick getaway. The captain finally agrees and tells Michael to go get on the radio and contact Afranche as soon as possible so that they can let them know about this change of plans. When Joe worries about abandoning Afranche to fight alone, the captain reassures him that he believes in the young man, and that this is the best thing that they can do for him right now. We shortly cut later to Afranche, who has just been told about the plan change. He worries about this though, but the captain reassures him that they need to do this if they're going to get out of here. He tells him to do his best while trying to save the girls, and Afranche continues his search for them. Before he can cut comms, however, a new signal appears on the GAIA GEAR's sensors. It's Zhang, and the man arrives in a flourish of thrusters and agile maneuvers. His personal Gussa has been painted all purple with his own fancy Chinese insignia brandishing its plating. When he lands, the man immediately fires a missile towards the GAIA GEAR. It seems the Ace's unit has been fully decked out with some extra gear. Luckily, it doesn't hit Afranche, but Afranche takes note that the missile hit one of the buildings in the process, one of their own base's buildings. He then looks back, and he's surprised to hear that the unit's pilot is trying to contact him. When Zhang asks if it is indeed Afranche as the GAIA GEAR's pilot, he immediately demands vengeance for his dead comrades and quickly charges toward Afranche, firing his bazooka at the young man and the GAIA GEAR, pelting the ground with earth-shattering explosions and driving him into cover behind a series of other buildings. But as he thinks he's gotten away, the ace pilot spots his suit's shadow and immediately bursts him in the back with his own Gussa's Vulcans through the window. As Afranche steps back, Zhang reveals one of the Gussa's hidden weapons that we haven't seen yet. A scissor-like beam cutter blade that is concealed and integrated into the unit's shield. It clips the building as he drives it towards Afranche, but luckily the young man manages to avoid it, the razor-like blades grinding against one of the building's sides as it sears its wall. When Afranche tries to backstep, asking why Zhang's endangering the city around him, Zhang laughs and admits once again that he's always dreamed of leveling this place. pushing him back and pelting the buildings around him with a storm of rockets. Afranche jumps out of the way and demands that he stop, but with the dust from all the debris falling from all around them, he can't see where Zhang is and begins to panic. This bites him in the butt as the man rushes him from the other side, taunting him as he can see from the way he's fighting he's nothing more than an amateur, and that if he wants to fight one-on-one, he's gonna have to get serious and clash beam sabers with him. The man then takes another swing with the beam cutters, and Afranche is forced to jet back far away from him. Afranche struggles, igniting a second beam saber at the last moment before Zhang charges at him once more, Zhang declaring that he'll have his head for this, with Afranche telling him in return to come at him and try it. As the GAIA GEAR's second beam saber ignites, the blades clash, and Afranche is now forced to fight hand-to-hand with the Gussa's powerful cutter blades. Outside in the building that's housing Urien and the two girls, Urien is going to be taking them to a car parked outside. As he enters the room, Urien the creep says he has something to show them. He opens the window, and the three of them watch as the GAIA GEAR engages in combat with the purple Gussa. The girls are happy that Afranche has come to rescue them, with Urien asking them who he thinks is piloting the man-machine outside. The girls are happy that Afranche has come to rescue them, with Urien asking them who he thinks is piloting the man-machine outside, saying it as a sly joke as he already knows the answer. Everly says he's lying and that Afranche promised he wouldn't pilot the GAIA GEAR again, but it seems Afranche has broken that promise and has come all this way to die. Everly is fearful as she knows he'll surely die fighting in that massive man-machine. She cries out, telling him to run away, and strangely, Afranche can hear her words, hearing her voice as she calls out to him. This moment of Afranche's new type senses kicking in leads to Zhang mocking him about it, that he thought that he was a new type, but in comparison to him, he's nothing but outmatched. Afranche holds out and realizes he can't let Zhang dictate the pace of this fight, and decides to take this fight into the sky. The GAIA GEAR blasts off in return, with Zhang calling him a coward and attempting to pick him off with the Gussa's beam rifle. But miraculously, the GAIA GEAR evades it and dives down into the street, charging at full speed and spearheading a lethal beam saber strike to Zhang's cockpit, with both blades bisecting the pilot's seat like a pair of scissors. With the battle over, Urien and the others are in shock as the GAIA GEAR stands victorious over the Ace's machine. Urien, seeing that his friend had just been killed, immediately takes the two girls and tries to leave the base, stating that now that Afranche is victorious, he will march on the headquarters building and demand their release, but they will be long gone before he manages to get to them. With the ensign trying to escape with his hostages, his assumptions are proven true, and they hear Afranche demand to the base that they hand the girls over immediately, ordering them all to surrender as he now has the entire base under his control. But as he stands before the building, he can't sense Everly's presence. When he starts to get worried, one of the Manhunter officers from the base gets on the blowhorn and tells him that Urien has taken them away. This angrily prompts Afranche to try to sense her location with his newly emerging new type powers. Luckily, he manages to catch a trace of her presence, and the GAIA GEAR blasts off in her direction. At the city harbor, Urien tries to force the girls into a stolen boat, stating that he's going to take them to someplace quiet so that they can wait for all of this to blow over. Throughout all this, as Krishna in particular refuses, Urien gets all creepy, and unbeknownst to him, recites a line of dialogue we've heard another Federation officer with his position say nearly 100 years prior. But before Urien can get away with them, the GAIA GEAR arrives and slams its feet into the concrete wharf next to his boat. When Afranche opens the cockpit and demands their release, Everly is overcome with joy, She runs over to the GAIA gear, causing Urien to become enraged, and tries to use his gun on Afranche, who's now exposed because he opened his cockpit. But luckily, in his spur of motion, Krishna manages to grab Urien by the waist, throwing him to the ground and knocking the gun away before the trigger is pulled, leading to the bullet to simply scratch off the GAIA gear's chest plate. When Afranche jumps down from the pilot's seat, the three of them gather together, with the two girls standing behind Afranche, with him taking and pointing the pistol that was on the ground towards Urien. As the young man tells Urien to give up, Urien laughs and tells Krishna that he's surprised that she managed to disarm him and that he underestimated her. Everly asks Afranche if he's okay, and Afranche says he himself is fine, but that he truly is sorry that he broke his promise to her. Everly laments that as long as he is safe, then that is enough. With the man still being held at gunpoint, Urien asks how he found them, and Afranche says he's not sure, that he could just feel it, and that it's something he can't really explain, that he felt Everly's presence, and that he came running to save her. Urien smirks and relays his beliefs that Afranche has no doubt become a new type. Afranche, on the other hand, says something interesting, that if he is a new type or not, it doesn't matter, and that he himself doesn't care. He just wanted to protect Everly in the end. Urien mocks him and says that he is quite valiant for doing this, and asks him why not they just go back home to the island instead. Afranche sees the obvious trap in Urien's words, and says he won't do that, just for Urien to come and try to kill him all over again. Urien then tells Afranche that he'll once again regret this, and that as long as Afranche continues forward on this path, he'll be forever bound to Char Aznable and his legacy. Afranche holds Everly by the hand and tells Urien that to him, that kind of life wouldn't be as sad as Urien believes. As Afranche holds the gun tighter, Urien asks how it is he's changed so much since they met, and Afranche admits what he's come to believe, that once he set foot inside the GAIA gear, he felt as if he and Char had become one with each other. Urien laments and admits that that's more of a reason not to let him live, and that the next time they meet, it'll be on the battlefield, that it'll be against one another in their man-machines instead. He then walks away, and as Afranche yells to him, Urien tells him that he's never going to let him go, and that the way he's been fighting has seemed like nothing more than a game. That he can kill as many enemy pilots as he wants, but won't feel a thing afterwards. But however, maybe it's not the same when you're up against a real person. He then asks if Afranche has actually truly shot someone before that wasn't in a man-machine. When Afranche admits that he hasn't, but nonetheless could, Urien replies with a sharp jab that he can't kill anyone, and runs away before Afranche can try, his gun firing into the night as he misses Urien by a mile, the man laughing at him as he says he should go practice some more. Krishna asks him why he let him go, that she could tell that Urien was scared, and that Afranche could have easily have ended it right there. Afranche himself laments that the man is right, and that he's not truly capable of killing a man face to face, that he feels as though the only thing that's been getting him through these fights has just been Char's memories doing the work. Afranche then tells Krishna to prepare the GAIA gear to go to the spaceport and to wait for him. This leaves us with only the couple alone. Everly asks what's wrong, and Afranche says that this is where the two of them have to say goodbye to one another. He's going to space, but not for the reasons they discussed on the boat earlier. But instead, he's doing it to honor those people who have put their lives on the line to get him to go there. That he's going up to space so that he can protect their home, the Earth, and especially to protect her. When Everly asks why she can't go with him, Afranche laments that he can't get her involved in this fight, and that he won't let her get dragged into this war that's about to break out. When Everly tries to refuse, Afranche says no, and that he won't lose her and that he wants her to live on without him. Still insisting that she come, Afranche tells her to find the cargo ship they came to Hong Kong on, asking her to go and ask Miranda to take her home. He then promises that he will return home to their island and tells her that he'll come back and for her to wait for him until then. Everly tries to fight it, but Afranche runs towards the GAIA gear, leaving her at the docks, ending the scene. Okay, I'm gonna geek out about this scene, but I'm gonna do that after this episode is over, because this one just really hits me in the perfect way. But anyways, let's get on to the end of the episode, because there's not much left, and I'd rather give my notes on things after this is over. Anyways, Afranche and Krishna head out in the GAIA gear. When Krishna asks if he's okay, Afranche tries his best to brush it off, and says he's fine and tells her to hold on tight while they head to the spaceport. When Krishna asks why Everly is staying behind, Afranche laments that he couldn't bring her with him, and that he'd be putting her at great risk if she came. When he asks Krishna if he's making a mistake by doing this, she says that if it feels wrong, then why not go back and get her? Afranche feels awful about this, but tells her that this is for the best in the long run. Krishna then tells Afranche to not worry about it too much then, and to try not to feel that way, that everyone goes through life with worries and regrets, and to not let those fears consume him. She then asks if there was any other way, and Afranche laments that this was the only way, that he knows how Everly can get, and that there wasn't any other way to keep her safe. The scene ends with Krishna praising him, with her telling Afranche that he's changed a lot since they met. Afranche agrees, and that he gives some thanks to Char's memories manifesting themselves throughout his mind, and that they're helping to guide him. Soon after, they reach the shuttle launch pad, where the Metatron crew members are holding off the Federation forces trying to stop them. When the GAIA gear arrives on the scene, Afranche tells the Federation troops to leave them alone, and if they try to halt this launch, that they will be destroyed by the GAIA gear. When the team reunites, Miranda is quick to ask where Everly is, and Afranche tells them she won't be coming with them. He asks Miranda if she can look after her, and if she doesn't, he won't be able to leave with a clear conscience. Miranda agrees and tells him to make his way onto the shuttle. It's time to go. On board the shuttle, the captain tells Afranche he did a good job, telling Afranche to help use the loading controls, and that they need to be fast so that they can load the GAIA gear. The scene ends with the team finishing the preparations to get the man machine loaded onto the shuttle. As the booster rocket's ready to fire, Afranche decides to wait inside the GAIA gear, and the captain tells him it's gonna be a bumpy ride from where he's sitting. Afranche says he's ready, but throughout the launch procedures, he can't help but worry about Everly. That if he dies in space, then he hopes that Everly can live on for the both of them. With a deep breath, Afranche waits as the numbers tick downward as the shuttle begins its final countdown. The episode finally ends with the shuttle launching, sending Afranche on his new quest as the new leader of Metatron. And oh my god, I am happy this arc of the story is finally over with. This definitely felt like a much longer part of the story, as GAIA gear tends to play itself very low and slow towards the beginning. But out of the whole audio drama, it's still definitely the most memorable arc, at least in my opinion. The later arcs in this story tend to get pretty fast-paced, and I'm happy we got this much time to set up our initial cast of characters. And I think right now, this is a pretty good segue into this next part I want to talk about, especially when it comes to GAIA gear, and that is, well, the characters. Starting with our original pair of lovers, Afranche Char and Everly Key. Let's finally talk about that final scene with them. Now, side note, this won't be the last we see of Everly. She will show up later towards the end, but it's gonna be largely towards the final act. She returns later, and it turns out she's been doing her own thing on Earth since Afranche left, and it's going to be super impactful towards the final episodes. Now, as for the scene itself, I find GAIA GEAR is perfect at giving us the true deconstruction of the Char character archetype. The part where he tells Everly that she has to stay back and to not get involved just hit me in the perfect narrative spot. Because you have Afranche, right, who is a clone of Char, both genetically and happens to have Char's memories stored inside his brain, but it doesn't affect him, and the line that Miranda gives him, that he was created in hopes of rectifying the mistakes and bad decisions made by Char Aznable, it really speaks volumes when you look at this moment between these two lovers. You had Char Aznable, who lost his only true love because he was too determined to win, that his desire to win led him to get her involved in the fight to begin with, and that all the fighting led to her death, only to then turn that character upside down and give us Afranche, who is the perfect opposite of that behavior. He doesn't get Everly involved and tells her to wait for him in return. Oh my god, it's like that George Lucas quote, it's like poetry, they rhyme. But not only do they rhyme in this case, but they truly mirror one another. I hope now with my ramblings, some of you might be able to agree with this, because this whole story with Afranche, this whole thing with him being the opposite of Char, is the biggest reason why I love this story entirely. As for the rest of the episode, it was pretty good. The fights with Zhang and the other Manhunter Gussas was a really cool thing to listen to. If you go and listen to it yourself, you can really get a good picture from the dialogue and the sound effects of what's happening. Plus, if you're like me, when I started making this video series, if you do the research into the book and the concept art, a lot of it does wonders for explaining and displaying everything. GAIA GEAR is literally a Gundam anime without the animation part, and it's done surprisingly really, really well, and it still surprises me how many people don't actually know that it exists. Anyways, that'll be it for episode 2 of my breakdown and review series on GAIA GEAR. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments, and if you have any other questions about it, I'll be free to answer them. I've actually been hard at work doing some stuff for the GAIA GEAR pages over on the Gundam Wiki, so feel free to hit me up if you have any questions, or if you just want to talk and complain about my writings. If you want me to cover any of that stuff, I know there's probably some people out there who want me to cover the man-machine units in detail and things like that, so for now we'll see if that will take this discussion anywhere fun. Anyways, that is the end of this video, and I hope you enjoyed. Tune in next time while I will be going into episodes 7 and 8, respectively, where we get to see what happens next with Afranche in space. So that'll be a fun time. Anyways, have a good day, and thanks for watching. This is GAIA Gaius signing off. Bye.